Can you make cider under pressure?
Under pressure. I know you guys are tired of me singing. There are so many songs with this particular brew. Like, I wouldn't just totally belt out It's a Whole New World, but I'm not. Because I like you people, and I know I can't sing worth crap, so apologies. This is going to test so many things, I just don't even know where to start.
The first thing is I did most of the research on this, and she's probably gotten sporadic accounts of some of the stuff.
I would be doing something somewhere in the house, and Brian would have like a eureka moment and just belt out something, and I was just like...
But before we get to that, I want to hydrate our yeast. I know we haven't been doing it, but we've had some yeast problems recently. Some of our yeast has not been good.
We had a bad experience.
So I'm gonna hydrate some. And all I'm gonna do is just take a little bit of our apple juice, because we are making cider. Not even a lot, see? Like a quarter cup or so. And I'm using Safe Ale US-05. We've used US-04 a lot, and I found out that US-04 and US-05 really don't like higher temperatures, like what we ferment in. But US-05 is actually slightly more tolerant of them. So I said, okay, this is another test, because I'll get more to that later. But pressure fermentation is supposed to help with that. But I'm just gonna take like half the packet or so. Yeah, that looks like plenty of yeast to make a gallon of cider.
Now this is a dry ale yeast. We have no intentions of back sweetening this. We actually want our cider to go dry, so it seemed appropriate.
That's right.
A little bit about our apple juice. This is called apple cider here in the United States of America. Not to be confused by apple cider, the alcoholic beverage in most of Europe. So I know there's this big, you know, word fight thing, and
we're not gonna fight over words.
We're not fighting over words. We're just saying in the United States, this kind of beverage is called an apple cider. In the UK, I think specifically, it's called cloudy apple juice.
Yeah.
Typically in the United States, apple cider is only available in the fall because that's when everybody wants apple cider. But basically, this is just pasteurized apple juice.
Oh, it is pasteurized?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It's pasteurized.
We get a lot of questions as to whether you can ferment pasteurized juice. Of course you can. It just doesn't have any wild yeast in it.
Yeah.
So you need to add yeast in order to do that.
Which we were going to do anyway, so
anyway.
there you go. So we have a full gallon of this apple cider, aka apple juice. We've used some of it in our rehydration of our yeast.
You can use just plain old water, but by having some of the sugars from the wort already in there, it actually helps the yeast wake up a little bit better.
Now, as you can see by all the condensation that's coming off of this,
it's cold.
It's cold, because it says right on there to keep refrigerated, so we did that.
Right, so this is gonna start up cold and then warm up over time. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about one misconception that we held for a very long time, like before the channel even, and that is that carbonation gases during fermentation
are bad.
And you need to get rid of those so that you can add new carbonation gases from natural carbonation.
But if the fermentation process is what creates the carbonation bubbles, and then the after fermentation
creates
is
bubbles.
A mini carbon fermentation.
Now, I read somewhere a long time ago, don't ask me where I saw it, but I saw it somewhere where they said that, pretty much. The theory was that because they're sitting in it for so long, and I'm thinking they were expecting stressed yeast. That is the only explanation that I can figure. If the yeast are stressed, they could make those gases taste kind of not so good.
Sure, they
that
could
makes
be
sense.
possibly creating other gases rather than just primarily CO2, which may create an off flavor.
However, we use yeast nutrient. Now, we didn't always. Another thing that we learned. So we shouldn't have stressed yeast, which means we shouldn't be getting weird carbonation gases, which completely blows a lot of theories that we have had. And it makes this possible.
So another thing that I have that just makes my brain hurt is, okay, so we're going to be fermenting and carbonating all at the same time in an enclosed environment, no airlock. All the rules have just been thrown out the window. Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. So how
That's right, this man has no, I can't say that one.
How does this work?
Okay, This is called pressure fermentation or fermentation under pressure. What we're going to do is set this up as if we were about to carbonate, but we're not going to turn on any gas, okay? Instead, it's going to keep all the pressure in the keg. Now, you might be wondering, but what about off-gassing? Don't worry about it. Yeast will actually ferment faster in higher temperature and under pressure. So you can do this at a higher temperature. Like a lot of people like to use Kveik yeast to do this, and they'll heat the whole keg or whatever container they're using to 90 plus degrees, and the Kveik yeast can ferment it off in just a couple of days. And the thing is, there's no off-gassing. Now, let me talk about that too. What?
If you're like me, heat, pressure, that just sounds like a bagoosh problem, right?
Except that you have a little thing called a pressure regulator, which isn't here. Here it is.
And that's your safety device.
So we can see what the pressure is in here.
And it also has safety valves in
Oh
it.
yeah,
that
you can release the pressure
if
if you need to.
something goes crazy, it's gonna go, nope, we're not gonna explode.
Now, I'm not going to even pretend and say that we've done this a million times, because we haven't. This is our first try at this, so you're going to learn along with us all the things that can go wrong. However, my understanding is it's incredibly simple. Like, it's simpler than usual. And the beauty of it is you need one container. This is our fermentation vessel and our serving vessel. Let that sink in for a minute. Fermentation and serving.
Now, another thing you might
There's
be
a couple of
thinking
questions that we have
of,
along the way.
you know, with the fermentation process that there's going to be sediment, it's going to fall to the bottom. And because our spigot has this weighted tube that's going to go all the way to the bottom, well, doesn't that mean you're going to get all that gunk on your first pour?
Yep.
Well, yes.
That's the question that I have. I think that's what's going to happen, is the first pour is going to have all the sediment in it.
And you just throw that away and then you're good to go.
Or let it sit for a minute and drink it if you want to.
The way these are designed is that it's indented so that the very outside is where all the sediment is going to fall, because we have the weight on our tube here that is going to push it down to that lowest part. So in theory, all those sediments can be discarded with your first pour, and then you have a clear, carbonated, refreshing beverage ready for you on tap.
That's the plan. Do we know if it's actually going to work? No.
Nope.
But we're going to find out as we go. So this is a TM Craft keg, or one of the knockoffs just like them, really. I ordered a TM Craft. I think I got a different one. But this is the TM Craft setup. And you have this hose that's important, because that is your feeder hose. Without that, you can't get it from the bottom. You only grab, like, you have to hold it upside down. Is not a good idea. But this is your faucet assembly, closed and open like that. So it has a spring load, so it won't just lock itself open. And you have your pressure release valve right here. Now, onto that, I have a canister already on here. These are just the 16-gram canisters, and I'm going to attach our...
Now, when I was cleaning everything out, I did submerge this section without what Brian's attaching now into our properly diluted Star San liquid. I made sure to release the keg so that, and then invert it so that way all the bubbles came out. So I knew that the Star San solution was throughout the system, and then I properly drained it before putting it on our dreaded super clean bleached towel. I also did put the entire canister in the Star San liquid and then invert it to let it drain out. So all of the things that are going to come in contact with our brew have been properly sanitized.
But what were they sanitized in?
The red bucket of sanitization! See, he thought I wasn't ready. Ha!
No, I
got him.
I knew she was setting me up for it. Okay, so something that's very, very important is you want to have your canister, your CO2 canister, already attached to this, but have the valve off. Gas is turned off, okay? That's really important, because if you don't put a canister on here, all your pressure is going to come right out. It's not going to hold pressure at all, and it makes for a much more messy situation than you really want. So I have this all set up with the pressure regulator, the handle, the dispenser, the tubing, the whole deal. We're all set for all of that. Our keg is clean. I have here our yeast, which is foaming up a little bit. I'm going to give that a few more minutes.
Now, considering it's foaming up as well as it is with a cold beverage, I'm going to say I think it's probably good, but like
Yeah,
Brian said,
I want to give it a few
we're
more
gonna give it a
minutes
few more
just to be
minutes.
100% sure. And this is something where you're going to see us start doing more often because we've had some bad luck with yeast, and I don't want to have bad luck with yeast anymore. I don't like stalls. I don't like problems.
Now, this is yeast that we did purchase at our local homebrew store.
Yeah, this should be fine.
So if you have a local homebrew store available to you, I would highly suggest getting yeast there because
At least for the time
more
being.
than likely, knock on wood and other things, it should be
Yeah.
less badly handled than if you get it from Amazon. That said, if the only option you have is Amazon, please, by all means, use our links, purchase your yeast through Amazon,
But test it.
and then just test it like we are now.
What we did in another video where the yeast was dead is we just added the new yeast right into the container and it became yeast hulls.
Yeah.
So it acted as a little bit of extra yeast nutrient.
Dead yeast is
It sucks wasting a whole packet of yeast,
for,
but we didn't really waste it.
for yeast.
Yeah. So what I want to do is start assembling this. I want to start putting it together. So first things first, we wanted, all right, there's more to it than that. The thing is, there's limitations to this. It sounds all great until you start thinking about it. Well, how do you add things in conditioning or secondary phase?
You don't.
You really don't. How do you get spices and stuff? You don't.
don't.
How do you add, you don't add fruit? You can't.
This is a one and done kind of deal.
And because even like wine tannin is a powder, and what if it settled or didn't sit right? I don't really want to have that gum up the works, so we're using tea. So there's a couple concessions to make, but I think it's interesting. And for this one, we're making a dry cider. Keep it simple. We're not going to add anything else. If you really wanted to, I believe you could just add allulose or erythritol, as long as you know about how much you want, to this mix, and everything will work out fine, and you'll have a sweet cider that comes out. For this, we're going to do a dry cider on purpose, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to pour our, do we have a funnel? Okay, so I have 1 tea bag in about 8 ounces of water. The amount of water isn't critical. In fact, it's going to dilute the juice a little bit, so use less water if you can, but the 1 tea bag is what's important, because keep in mind, 1 tea bag is going to actually be filling this entire gallon, so 4 ounces, 6 ounces, 8 ounces in here really doesn't make any difference. That's an important thing. A lot of people ask that all the time.
Also, the tea type is extra important. Brian said 1 tea bag, but he didn't tell you that it was black tea. Just plain old black tea.
That's assumed.
Not spiced tea, not flavored tea, not herbal tea, just black tea. Why? Because we're using it as a tannin additive, not as a tea flavorant.
That said, that is one way to get a flavor into your cider, but that's a little bit of a different thing. For this, we just wanted to make sure this is like, we're testing to make sure the system works this way, okay? Proof of concept, I believe that's the term.
Yeah.
So our yeast, I'm gonna call it good. It foamed up enough, I'm gonna call it good. I'm gonna dump that in as well. And the reason I'm putting all this stuff in before the juice is because
We're not sure how
I think this is a full 1 gallon, but I don't know. So I wanna make sure that I don't have to leave something out. So I'd rather leave a little bit less juice.
How hot was your tea?
Hot.
You just put yeast in there.
Yep. I may have just killed our yeast. But probably not.
I was just seeing the steam come off, and I was like,
So by filling this right away with the, okay, I may have screwed up, all right? And you know, this is the way this show works sometimes.
this is unscripted, people.
Yeah, I didn't think about the tea. I should have let that cool. It was probably still too hot. But hopefully I got cider in there fast enough.
What's it feeling like? It's feeling cold. Okay, good. Okay, I think we're good.
You know what?
Put some more cider in it first, just to make me happy.
It's not cold?
Well, I just guess.
At this point, you might be thinking, did he do that on purpose? No. That was a little bit of a screw up. But we know this is the packet that yeast came from, so we know it's good.
Yeah.
That feels cold now.
It's cold now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to dump some more in, not even the packet, because this will make 5 gallons, okay? So I just put some more in, just in case I killed off a few of them. Hey, more yeast nutrient, right?
That's right. That's right.
By the way, the yeast nutrient that I rushed to put in there, because she said it as I was doing it, we used 5 grams of fermentation. Sorry, this is very chaotic here today. Don't mean for it to be, but it sort of is.
Welcome to our life.
Yeah. And now I'm just going to pour this in to get all that off of there, but stuck to it. Okay, so looking inside here, I can see that the level is somewhere right about here. So it does look like this is a little more than a gallon, but I'm not going to risk it too much. I'm just going to Pour some more in and check, and pour in and check. Okay, I'm being super uber paranoid about this because I really don't want to have this overflow. That would be bad. But it does look like this might actually hold almost all of this juice. I stopped probably in here. So I left a little bit of space for pressure, air, that kind of thing. And because I'm paranoid, I just didn't really want to make a mess.
So that means this is mine.
Yeah. I also needed to leave enough room for this. So the way this works is it shouldn't foam over, because the pressure should keep the gases inside rather than letting them escape. Which brings me to another interesting thing. We talked about it just recently, and it's not something that we've discussed much, but think about it. When you sniff your airlock, and you sniff your airlock, I mean, admit it, everybody sniffs their airlock. When you sniff that, what do you think you're smelling? Flavors that should be in your brew. I mean, think about that. That's what that is. Aroma is mixed to taste. Yeah. So if it's coming out, it's not in. Therefore, this keeps it all in. So should be a more flavorful brew at the end of the day.
So this is like the opposite of the better than out than in.
Yeah. It's better in than out. I need to take a reading on this thing.
Yes, that's what we need to do. All right. All right, so what is your estimation of how much apple cider we added?
7/8 of a gallon.
7/8.
So like 112 ounces or so. I don't know what 7/8 of a gallon actually is. So just in case anyone ever had the weird, crazy notion that we script our show.
Nope.
No. We go into it having an idea of what we're going to do. And we sometimes have notes on what we're actually going to accomplish.
This time we didn't. I've been writing them as we've been going along.
This time is a little unique. Oh, it's the answer to the universe, 1.042. Actually, wait. No, it is 1.044. Now, just do some quick calculation here just to be on the safe side. 0.044. This will come out to about 6% or so.
For cider, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Now, here's the beautiful part of this. You don't need to add priming sugar. You don't need to add anything to it because it's all in there. Kind of neat, right? So you don't have to worry about that kind of thing because the carbonation is automatic as well. Because if it ferments, it carbonates. So it's kind of kills two birds with one stone. And that's the neat thing about this. And the slightly confusing, frustrating, and terrifying thing about this, because what? You know, when I first started looking into it, I was like, there's no way. But you know what? For beer, it's actually very popular for all the reasons that I've stated. And in beer, you don't generally have extras that you put in there.
Right. And if it works for beer, then why wouldn't it work for a dry cider?
Exactly. So that's why we're doing it. So now I'm just going to put this back on. Well, put this on. It wasn't on there earlier. Tighten it down. I usually just go hand tight on this. I don't really go any tighter. There is a gasket inside there. Make sure the O-ring is in there and it seats there. It's tight now. Do not put any gas in. You don't need to. Because what's going to happen is, as it ferments, it's going to produce its own. So the gas that's here, you know what that's for? Dispensing later on. That's it.
All right, so one thing that we did off camera, I just want a full disclosure, is before we took the gravity reading, Brian made sure to do it a little mixy, swirly.
She was doing stuff, so
because you want to make sure that all the components that you've added in there are well integrated and homogeneous. Before you take your gravity reading, otherwise your gravity reading isn't going to be correct.
Yeah. So at 1.044, because most juices are 1.050-ish, with a little bit of extras that we added in there, that sounds about right. I think we're good.
Okay.
So what are we going to do with this now?
We're going to let it sit.
Well, we're going to monitor the heck out of it.
Yeah. Like,
we do not need to put this on a lipped tray.
Because it shouldn't.
It's not going to leak. There's nothing to leak. It can't come out. How cool is that?
The expression on my face is legit, people. I am slightly terrified about this whole thing.
She didn't really want to do this. Like, I kind of talked her into it. I think it's a good thing. I think it's worthy of experimentation. And that is something that we've never really shied away from. We'll try it. This is like about as natural a method as you can get, really, because we're not adding anything extra. Right. We're actually removing a lot of things. So this is a great system if it works.
Brian also loves gadgets. He loves them. He tries to limit them as much as possible, but he can't help himself. He loves them. So
we have 3 of these now.
We have 3 kegs now. So this just helps justify.
We had one of them sitting around for a year. I never used it. As soon as I got it out and I started using it, I was like, oh, we need more of these. So I got 2 more.
So yeah, there you go.
And we have some more stuff coming to help with these keg systems to improve on it.
But that's another video. So we'll be back as soon as this is ready to show you something.
All right, so we're just about 24 hours in, maybe a little bit less. And as you can see, that thing is already pegged. That is showing close to 40 PSI. Now, everything that I read said you want to be more like 8 to 12 PSI. So I'm going to go to the pressure release here and release some of that pressure. I'm going to play it safe and go to around 10. It's going to build up again after a little while. Whoop, it's building up right off the bat. So it's going to build up over time again anyway, but I'll just keep bleeding that off every day or so just to keep it around that 10 PSI mark until we get closer to the end of fermentation.
Sorry to interrupt the video, but I wanted to tell you about the City Steading VIP Club.
It's a super friendly bunch of brewers who get together and constantly help each other and share information.
A large part of it is our private Facebook group where you can ask questions and get help.
We also have Zoom meetings monthly for most tiers of membership. These hangouts are a great way to ask questions or just hang out with us and the other members.
In addition, the higher tiers get their names right in our videos. So consider becoming a VIP. Now, back to the video.
Okay. Some interesting things have happened in the last week or so. One is our regulator broke because the pressure built up so much overnight that it pegged it against the little pin and it turned so much that it won't go to 0 anymore. 25 is now 0. So I have to estimate everything. Right now, here's what has occurred. We degassed this. I let the pressure off like 5 times a day. No exaggeration.
It was
3
obnoxious.
to 5 times a day.
It stayed on our kitchen counter the entire time.
Yeah.
We couldn't put it in the fermentation station because we had to babysit this stupid thing.
Yeah. You can tell how Jerica feels about this. Because I learned something very important. At 37 PSI, yeast stop reproducing, which means they're not really going to do much for the cider anymore. Now, what I will say is the smells that came out when I released pressure smelled amazing. I mean, it smelled like a really, really good cider. And I think that's because all the volatile aromas and flavors stay in. They don't get released. Now, because I had to release the pressure, they did get released. So it sort of defeated the purpose, but sort of not. Okay? So there's that. We did put this in the fridge 2 days ago. So it's very cold. You can probably see all the condensation on it. It's very cold, and that's on purpose. It's holding about 10 PSI of pressure right now. I have not even opened this CO2 cartridge yet. Nothing. Every bit of pressure that's in there is natural carbonation. Now, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I have learned that the carbonation gases built up from fermentation, they're fine. Okay, it was something that I read a long time ago that you should get rid of those. And I think what they were really trying to say is degassing during fermentation is a good thing. And it got interpreted in other ways. But anyway, we learned from that, okay? That's the whole point. Learning, right?
We're constantly learning. We're learning that I'm not a fan of this process.
Yeah, I don't know how often we're going to do this, but here's where we're at now. This should be done. I'm not seeing the gauge still going up. It would literally rise up in just minutes before. So it's probably not producing much more gas.
However, we have a bit of a quandary. We currently have Schrodinger's cider.
Yep.
We have no idea what is in here.
Well, we
Other
know
than
there's apple juice and yeast
What
at
we
least.
put in there.
We know that fermentation happened because the pressure buildup was so great.
Right.
Now, our regulator only goes to 35 PSI. If your regulator goes higher, you might be okay. Like we have others that we got now since this, they go up to 90. I don't think this would hit 90 PSI. I'd be shocked. But you could at least know beforehand. The only reason why it went so high is because it was overnight and I didn't have a chance to get to it.
Right. So we don't know how much sediment has fallen out. We don't know what our yeast cake situation is. We don't know what our gravity reading is. We know nothing.
And that is a little bit worrisome. And one of the trade-offs of this method, I'm still keeping an open mind now. I'm trying to say, what's the good things about this and what are our observations? Okay, we're not really making a judgment. We're making observations. So My thought is this, and a little bit of research that I did. People say, kind of like in distilling, the first batch that comes off is your Trub or your Lees. You kind of just dump that. Some people like to drink it, right? Stacy's husband, John, one of our mods' husbands, he likes to drink the Lees. I don't. It's gross, but he does it, and it's okay.
all right. That's
I'm
all
not
right.
judging. I think it's gross.
The base of this container is kind of an inverse
Yeah, it's
conical.
like a concave.
So it goes up rather than goes down. So the conicals are designed so that all the loose cake falls into that reservoir. We have the reverse. So in theory, all the loose cake is going to fall in the reservoir on the outside, which is where our weighted tube should be positioned, right?
But there's only one way to find out. So I have a different glass here, thinking that the first pull off of this is probably going to have all the lees, and probably not really going to be something we want to drink, but I'm going to give it a shot. Well, it is most definitely carbonated. I will say that. I mean, it's actually, it looks really freaking amazing, okay? I just have to admit, that is not what I expected to be the first pull off of this.
Yeah. I mean, it looks cloudy, so I'm thinking that's got a lease in it. But maybe we'll just set that to the side and see what happens.
Now, I'm going to take a reading on this, but I can't, I need the baster.
Oh, I assumed you're going to pour directly into there.
Oh, I could do that. Let me do that.
Okay.
Just drink all this. Or do something. The problem is all the foam.
All the foam, yeah. How are we going to get a reading? It's a calamity of errors.
That's a lot of foam.
Oh, golly. Where is even the...
Yeah. Well, here's the foam. The good thing is the head of foam goes away really quick, so we just give it a minute. But let me put a towel under this, because these things leak. So there's some weirdness with this, but there's also some positives. I mean, that's a decent...
I would say that's definitely clearer than that. So I think our first pour did its job.
It's possible. And that's your loss. You know what I mean? You're going to have some loss if you do it any way you do it. So that's a possibility. So where are we at? Oh, wow. It ended at 1.004.
All right, I need to get our notes. We don't
Yes,
have
you
our
do.
notes.
Okay, so right now, this is sitting at 1.004. Let me just do some quick math here. If we take 1.044, which is our starting gravity, minus 1.004, which is our ending gravity, and this is so low, I'm going to use the traditional 131.25 instead of my 135 because there's less ethanol concentration. It makes sense, just trust me.
It's a bell curve.
Gives me 5.25% ABV. So this is smack in the middle of normality for any brew. By the way, these things were all sanitized, so I'm just going to pour this off into a glass, and we'll go from there. As for your comment of one is clearer than the other, I don't think so. That looks about the same to me. Could be. But here, let me get a little bit more. And I know I'm only opening it halfway. People told me you have to open it fully, like commit to it. Okay. But I lost all my pressure because I have to open this up now.
Yeah.
What's my gauge say?
Your gauge, I don't even know what your gauge.
It's ridiculous because it's so far off. There we go.
There you go.
That's serving pressure. Things are just leaking all over the place now. She hates this thing. But I did get a lot of foam. It should be carbonated. I see bubbles on the side. What?
I'm getting apple funk up the wazoo.
This is an incredibly dry cider, 1.004, so it shouldn't have a lot. I don't know about funk. I smell sweetness.
Okay.
Did you taste it yet?
Nope.
It's a very mild, mellow cider.
It tastes better than it smells to me. The end flavor, I'm getting a little bit of the smell notes.
There's a slight, there is a very, very slight sulfur smell on it. It's not the apple funk. I'm actually getting just a very, very slight rotten egg smell. the sulfur hydroxide.
It's not working for me aroma-wise.
I mean, it's so minor. I barely detect it. Really.
Okay, yeah, but we know that my smell versus your smell is vastly different, and that's common in each individual.
What this is missing is body and tannin, and there's
Complexity.
We did add black tea. I mean, it's basically just apple juice with
Sure, yeah.
black tea added. It's not bad. It's just not great.
For all the effort and the destroyed
Yeah,
equipment,
I don't think it was worth it. There's better ways to do this. I think had we just fermented this the standard way, it probably would have taken about the same amount of time.
Sure.
And probably we could have gauged it better. We could rack it better.
Yeah.
So there's more control.
Yes.
If you have no other way, or you just want to set and forget, this probably isn't it.
No.
Unless you have but the pressure buildup is just too much.
Yeah.
I can't see it.
This
is not a set and forget. It was supposed to be. That's the thing. A lot of people talk about it's supposed to be.
Nope.
Now, if you used, say, a Kveik yeast and you heated this to 95 degrees or 100 degrees, and it could be done in 2 days, where you have to babysit it for just 2 days instead of 7, maybe, I don't know. It's still, to me, it seems like a lot of effort for not a lot of return.
Now, I didn't do the research on this, but is my understanding that this method of fermentation is more popular in beer. Culture than it is in other.
Yeah, because the idea is it never
beverages.
touches air, and the volatile aromas don't blow off. All the same reasonings.
So potentially that's a more viable solution if you're making beer. We did a cider because we make more ciders than we do beers.
Right.
For the way we like to proceed and the way we like to control and manipulate our brews, I'm going to say this really doesn't work for us.
It does make a really nicely carbonated beverage. I mean, look at that head. But that's really the only advantage that it did. When you really break it down, that's the only thing that it did better than what we normally do. And if you naturally carbonate sort of properly, you can still get that. Do get just, a minute amount of that rotten egg smell, which I'm going to attribute to the fact that I couldn't degas along the way. I couldn't remove anything along the way. Yeah. Couldn't really aerate it, actually.
Couldn't do anything with it.
It doesn't taste bad. It really doesn't. I mean, we're probably not even going to do scores, but I would put this like at a 5. It's okay.
Well, we need to do scores because otherwise, what's the point?
This was just an experiment to see what we could do with cider and a cake.
So I'm not putting it on the scorecard?
Well, we could do it. Okay. Sure, let's do scores. Repeatability?
Who knows?
If you want to sit there and aerate this thing out every 2 hours, sure. I'm sure. Okay, I know a lot of people out there are using kegs in all manner of ways, and I'm sure somebody has done this and probably done it better. I'm not decrying that, we're
This was our first attempt. And
this is based off of research, seeing other people, what they did, and kind of copying their methods. So far, I have to say, I'm not super impressed. As I'm sitting here watching, I'm seeing sediment fall out of that mug, by the way. So there's heavy stuff falling out. Right. It's thinning at the top.
But that's what we were expecting because...
Right, so there's that, and that worked. I don't think it's much clearer as you go up, though. Like, I just pulled this. It's really no clearer. It's the same. So, let's do this. Advantages of this method. What's better about this? Carbonation. Guaranteed carbonation. If it ferments, you have carbonation. There's no two ways about it. It's a closed system, so less likely to get oxygenated. Less likely to get vinegar. That, I think, is really the only two advantages. Disadvantages, you can't see what's going on. You have lees at the bottom, so you don't get to rack. You have zero input and control because you cannot see anything inside there. It's a little terrifying experience for somebody like me who's used to the visual part of it.
You can't make adjustments. You can't take gravity readings.
You can't add solids. You can't, there's so many things you can't do. Yeah. For beer, when it's all just liquid, I can see why this might be sort of viable. The pressure thing kills me. How do you work with that? Because they say 8 to 12 PSI is ideal for fermentation.
And we were getting it.
It was at 30 and 40. I mean, I was constantly releasing it to keep it under 30.
Literally broke our gauge.
And our gauge goes to 35, so it's already 3 times what it should be. I'm just not seeing any real viable reason to use it this way.
I don't like it, but I'm still listening, if that makes sense. The whole process just seemed weird to me and foreign, and then watching what had to occur and then seeing the things break and going, okay, well now we're guessing this, we're guessing that, we're guessing that, and we don't really know. That really irritated me, being a pseudoscience fermenter. I like to be able to interact with my fermentation and make adjustments when necessary, because I know that it's an organic process and that things are going to go awry. Things are going to be unexpected. That's part of it. That's what happens. And unless you're able to react to that and make adjustments, then you're kind of at the whim of whatever's going on. And we were totally at the whim of what's going on. And I am not happy with my result.
So, repeatability, I don't know, like a 3 to a 4?
Sure.
There's no way to really know, because it depends on how much effort you put in, how much you're going to get out of this. So
Right.
It really depends on that. Also, temperature means a lot. We kept it at room temperature, was about 75 degrees for us all the time, and then we chilled it. So there's that. As for enjoyment, though, of the actual beverage, if someone handed you this glass, let's talk about that.
I would discreetly...
That bad?
Thank you!
I'm not getting that at all.
This is my fake smile.
All right, so let's just put a score on it and get this over with. 1, 2, 3, 5.5. I personally feel, as a cider, this is average.
I don't know if I'm just in a mood, but I don't like the aroma. I don't like the flavor. The after flavor kind of stopped me from wanting to take a second drink.
I don't get an after flavor.
I am.
Okay, and that's fine.
And to each their own, you know? Everybody has their own experience. Everybody has their own...
Yeah, and I'm not discounting that. I'm just confused because I'm not seeing that.
I know. I'm not telling you.
Oh, okay.
I'm expressing to you, because some people think... We've seen it in the comments. Oh, you did this number and then you did that number. And I'm like, yeah, because I didn't have a TARDIS, so I couldn't go back and share the experiences at those different time frames, those different moves, those two different experiences, and be able to have a side-by-side comparison. I had in most cases, a full year in between. So I don't know, right? And so for me now, in this Derrick-ness, I don't like this. I don't like the smell of it. The flavor is kind of meh. And then I'm getting some funk on the end that is reminding me back to the aroma that's making me going, I don't really want to drink that.
Okay. And that's fine. We have a very different experience on this one, and I think that's interesting. To me, I say I have made ciders that are far worse than this. Way worse. They tasted worse. They weren't as full. They didn't have anything that this has going for it. To me, this has a decent apple flavor. It's not great, but it's a decent apple flavor. It's got a good carbonation. The aroma, there is, like I say, that very, very slight sulfur smell, but it's like you really have to dig for it. And I get more apple than I do sulfur. So you kind of have to dig, in my opinion. I'm not getting any weird back flavor that she's talking about. I'm not saying she's wrong. We're each, our own person and can have our own experiences. I'm just like confused because we're getting very different experiences from the same brew, and that's very unusual for us.
And for those of you who might be questioning, going, oh, well, Derrick's palate is better than Brian's palate, that's not a thing. That is absolutely not a thing. And I just want to put that out there because I know lots of people are going to be throwing some darts at me right now.
No, they'll throw darts at me.
Let's take cilantro, for example. Cilantro is like the polarizing herb. Some people absolutely positively hate it and say it's the devil's herb. And some people are like, it's great. I love adding it to things. neither one of them is wrong. It's actually been proven that it's a chemical chemistry thing where you're either going to like it or you're not. And that's not your fault. It's just
Kind
how
of like the asparagus thing.
how we're made.
The smell's there, just some people can't smell it.
Right. So
If you don't know what I mean, look that up.
trying to be all serious, then you run up asparagus. Anyway, so I'm very sensitive to aromas. I'm going around smelling things all the time. Brian thinks I'm nuts, and he's right, but that's just a sensitivity that I have. And Brian doesn't, but that doesn't mean that he's wrong and he's...
Smell those two. I'm sorry. Yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm... She was saying it doesn't mean that I'm wrong.
Mine smells worse than yours.
Really? Then we have a huge discrepancy here, because I smell the hydrogen sulfide in mine much more than in yours. It's in the gas. It's in the bubbles. A fresh pour, I smelled it instantly.
You poured mine first and then poured yours.
Yep.
I wonder if I have more of the lees in mine and somehow lees, I'm sorry. And
okay, then taste this one. Okay, if things look different, it's because our camera, the new one that we just got, decided, nope, it's too warm. Don't ask me why. I don't understand, but whatever. So if things look different, that's why we had to get a different camera. Thankfully, we had more than one.
all right, so I taste Brian beverage. I taste my beverage. I think there's a difference, but I can't really tell. And even if there is, I still don't like it. So there you go.
There's a very, 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 very minute difference, but I don't think it's enough to worry about. Smell-wise, I do think the further in you go, the less you get. Even though I think it's in the gas. The CO2 foam head seems to have more of the smell that I don't like.
So this kind of circles back on itself to some original preconceptions that we had, where old gas was bad and you want fresh gas for carbonation. So is this proving that?
That's an interesting question. Maybe it is.
But we don't know. It could simply
One
be...
test is not conclusive.
Right. More testing is necessary, but my personal opinion is I don't want to test this system anymore.
Yeah, it seems kind of
frustrated and irritated with enough that I'm just like, I'm done. Now, that doesn't mean we won't ever test it again, because more than likely we will, but we broke our gauge, we got a less than pleasant brew out of it, and we had no control. We like control.
I have to agree with that assessment. The positives do not outweigh the negatives in this case. There's just too many. Could be our own inexperience at this.
Yes.
It could be our method was flawed in some way.
Absolutely.
Could be we just don't have the right gear for this, which that takes into another thing. This is a $100 unit. If it's going to cost way more than that to do this right, is it worth it? To some people, it might be. We just like to present the options, and we were told that this is a way to go, pressure fermentation. So far, for this exact brew, I'm not seeing where it's worth it.
But again, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, and that's what this show is all about. Trying different things, trying to bring it down to a level that makes sense for everybody. And in our case, I don't think that this is something we're going to pursue. Now, do not mistake that for us saying we're never going to use kegs. You're going to see these mini kegs often, because I've invested in a little bit more. There's going to be another video where I talk about some of the stuff that we've gotten that makes them work even better. And for pressurizing and carbonating, they are fantastic. When you use them for that, they're awesome.
For fermentation, however, at this current time, we're not really satisfied with the results. More investigation is required, more experimentation is required, and when we do that, we'll make sure to share it with you.
And I also want to say something. Pressure fermentation is a realistic thing, and it does actually work really, really well. This may not be the best method for it. That's all we're actually getting at. I was told that you can do it. It didn't work out in this case. But anyway, I'm going to stop blabbering and say, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.